Now, the inquest into the killings of the Cradock Four resumed today in the Gqeberha High Court. The proceedings aim to uncover the circumstances surrounding the 1985 murders of anti-apartheid activists Matthew Goniwe, Calata, Sparrow, Mkhonto, as well as Sicelo, Mhlauli. The four were detained and later killed by members of the apartheid-era security branch. The inquest comes a week after President Cyril Ramaphosa signed a proclamation to establish a judicial commission of inquiry into whether there were efforts to block the investigation as well as prosecution of other apartheid-era crimes. For more reaction on the first day of the inquest, I'm now joined by Yasmin Sooka, a human rights lawyer and former TRC Commissioner who was in court today. Yasmin, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it as well for joining us here on Newsfeed PM. Just wanted to start perhaps by asking you just your thoughts with regards to proceedings in court today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really quite emotional and quite a historic moment, not just for me, but for the families as well, because, 3 weeks from now, we will be commemorating the 40th anniversary of the killings of the Cradock Four. And so the inquest comes at a very historic moment for the families. And they're quite eager, in fact, for their voices to be heard for the first time, because even though there were two previous inquests and the TRC's amnesty hearing, they don't actually feel that they were able to tell the truth about how the experiences actually impacted on them.
So important. Why do you think there's been such a delay, though, for so long? I mean, for example, the National Prosecuting Authority in itself has delayed action for decades on politically motivated crimes then uncovered by the TRC.
I think that's the million-dollar question, and one which we hope is going to be answered by this commission of inquiry that the president has agreed to establish. We set out in the papers that have been filed by 25 families and the Foundation for Human Rights that, from what we can see, there was political interference at quite an official level. And so it's really important that this commission of inquiry investigate who was responsible and also what the motivation for that was. All we have is the versions that we've been given by former heads of the NPA, which speak to how they were blocked from investigating and prosecuting these matters. In the meantime, of course, a disservice has been done to the families. And in the case of the Cradock Four, in 2019, when we raised the matter with the NPA, I think we provided a list of around 49 people who were implicated either in the planning, the authorization, and the actual killings. And today, there are only 5 of them left alive.
Sure.
And on the side of the victims' families, Matthew Goniwe and her daughter have died. And so you also have, the passing of time impacting on the ability of families to actually access the truth and closure as well.
You spoke a little bit earlier about that political interference. And it may be hard a little bit to understand who should perhaps be held accountable in that sense too. But once that is ascertained, what would or should be happening to somebody who has politically interfered in something like this, which has now lasted for so long, 40 years ultimately, and still a sense of injustice?
The way in which we are looking at it is that these were officials who were at the highest levels of the state or in their employ, and therefore the state is responsible. And that is why the families are asking that there be a declaration, firstly, that their rights were violated, and that in recognition of that, they should be awarded constitutional damages, which will in fact allow the families then to ensure that if necessary, they're able to secure additional assistance, either to conduct private prosecutions or memorialization, or in fact more truth recovery exercises. And so we look at the responsibility and the onus being on the state to actually carry that legal obligation, which was to investigate and prosecute, which they didn't do. And that's really a violation by the state of the rights of victims. And I think that's something that we need to ask. I mean, why is it that the democratic state failed to take on the struggle for justice for victims, most of whom had given up their lives so that we could have this peaceful transition, and for which we achieved freedom, actually?
Yeah. Yasmin, I wish we could speak just a little bit more, because there's so much to really unpack when it comes to this, and we certainly hope we'll continue to do so, because proceedings are continuing in this regard then, with regards to the Cradock Four case then as well. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it this afternoon.